Just want to say welcome to everyone. I know I've got a lot of San Antonio crowd here, but we also have people from a lot of other places, which is great. Love that about our virtual events. Just we're all about community and bringing the creative community together. And I know that is also part of, Polywork's mission. So we'll get to talk about that here in a little bit. Just quick housekeeping things for my San Antonio people. We're restarting our event stuff after a year in the pandemic, and we are looking for people to help us out. So if you want to be a part of growing the creative community in San Antonio and close, we are looking for programming directors, education, sponsorships, and web directors. So if any one of y'all is interested and wants to volunteer and help us out and put some great programming out and resources and give back to the community, just send me an email, president@sanantonio.aiga.org, and let me know and we can talk. Without further ado, today we're going to be talking to the awesome team at Polywork, Peter, Johnston, and Megan, about Polywork, the new platform, and what it's been to designing and building things for them, right? So today we have Peter here, who is the founder and CEO of Polywork, originally from Belfast, Northern Ireland. He is a self-taught product designer who's worked at MNC Saatchi and Google before becoming a serial entrepreneur, which led him to found Polywork. He's been recognized as Forbes 30 and Under 30 Enterprise Software category in 2017. He has been named by Telegraph as the most influential entrepreneur in Britain. And he is a huge proponent for gender and racial diversity in the workplace. He's been published in places like The Guardian, Fortune Magazine, Forbes. And when he is not running Polywork, he is playing basketball. And then with us also is Megan, who is the head of go-to-marketing and growth at Polywork. She is a marketer turned business leader driven by innovation, strong brands, and user-first products. Outside of her 9-to-5, she is an avid beta tester of products and loves any NCAA college sports. She is the strategic force behind Polywork, with the mission to reveal, the professional path can be more colorful and richer than we can imagine, which is, great, the mission here. So I don't want to ramble too much before we get into talking, because I want Megan and Peter to be the stars of this. We do have a VIP code for all of y'all to get your Polywork profile set up. Thank you, Peter and Megan, for giving that to us. If you go to their website, polywork.com, just press a button, have a VIP code at the top, and that is all you need to put in, all lowercase, and get started. And maybe while we talk, you can get it set up and share your profiles afterwards. And then, hi, I just wanted to give Megan and Peter a quick little time to introduce yourselves, kind of say hi to the crowd, and then we can kind of get to talking a little bit more.
Sounds good. Meg, you want to go first?
Sure. It's so nice to be here. We've been planning this event for several weeks now, maybe over a month, and just really excited to chat with you guys today. I think design has been at the center of Polywork since its infancy, and I think that's what makes this event, and it's going to make it so much fun today. I'll pass it over to you, Pete.
Yeah, thank you for having us. I'm excited. You gave a great intro, so I'm Peter. Yeah, excited to chat and be cool.
Well, I know we have some people here that know what Polywork is, but I know there's some that don't. So let's just start with the basics. What is Polywork? What is this colorful stuff that we've been seeing all over around?
Yeah, we distract people with 3D colorful graphics. Yeah, I mean, we're a professional network. So I guess the key difference to Polywork to existing networks is that we focus more on the things you've actually done versus some of the other platforms predominantly build your identity around your education and the job title that you hold. We kind of decided we would create a slightly more democratized way to represent you based on the things you've done before, and took a pretty flexible approach to what that ended up looking like. So it could be stuff you've done part of your 9-to-5, outside your 9-to-5 professionally, or also seemingly Polywork has evolved into a lot of people using it to post social stuff too. So yeah, that's us kind of in a nutshell.
So yeah, I mean, I know, and I think you've talked about before, even building on that, what are the key things? Like, I guess something was broken that, led you to really like going this 360 way, I guess. because it's a very different method, similar, but it's a very different way of representing things. And you know, we can talk a little bit more. I know you have certain things that you've said that you're gonna do or not gonna do, right? And design being a key piece of Polywork, I think since its infancy, you being a product designer, you know, why did you decide to focus on that or like make that such a big deal? Because it's not always the case for a lot of new products and companies.
You're specifically referring like the no like stuff, or more just why did we take the approach of helping people share kind of what they do?
Yeah, well, in general,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I was going to ask you about the no like as well. So if you want to, you know, go from general and then kind of talk a little bit more in detail about that, would be great.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I think I mean, like most designers are really just problem solvers, and I think we all kind of get that itch, whether we decide to solve it through like becoming user experience designers or visual designers, or we're usually trying to like solve a problem or tell a story. And I think when I first started the business, it was to solve a problem, and now it's a little bit of both, to solve a problem and to tell a story. I think the pain point that I personally experienced, I worked at Google like 11 years ago now, so long time. And really, like, it was I'm from a very small town in the north of Ireland. It was, you know, a massive office. We worked with like on a lot of international projects. It was my first real experience of like how big the world was. And particularly that world, there was like more people on like my floor in like the Google London office in the UK than there was in my like village. And so really that was my first exposure to just like the sheer volume of people we worked with, whether that was colleagues or freelancers, like businesses we would outsource to for everything from like data visualization to software engineering. And it was, we just didn't understand anything about them. And I always used to ask, like, how do I learn about these different creatives that we're like seemingly being asked to team up with at like 100 miles per hour on these projects? And the answer was kind of, people were confused. They were like, well, what do you want to know? I'm like, well, I want to know what they've done. Have they worked with our team before? Like, are they good? Should we work with them again? And it was kind of left with this like gap of just like, oh, well, maybe check the HR system. And that HR systems aren't used to track anything like that. They're used for like our tax information, you know? And so between that and then the other answer was like, oh, go to LinkedIn. And what we realized was when we went to LinkedIn was a couple of things are like fundamentally broken, or not broken, but I would say I don't think of that useful for trying to solve the problem I was trying to solve, which was what have these people done before, and have they worked with people I know before? Because that's usually the proxy for which we're going to like engage on like a team project. Like, is the person good? Have they been vouched for by someone that I've worked with before? And so when we really looked at LinkedIn, we realized that, you know, the education told us that, I mean, if anything, that they've probably learned how to study. Like, that's kind of it. Like, they've learned how to study, and, you know, and maybe they've learned some like fundamentals of design, and that was like kind of it. But, and then when you went to the skills, which is the predominant form of like identification on LinkedIn, it's still, I think this is the subtle distinction, that it didn't really tell us, like, what did you use the skill to do? Like, I don't really mind what skills you have. I just want to know what you did. Like, what did you actually produce? And I think that's something that's missing in the design world. There's often a lot of like keywords and buzzwords thrown out there, but really it comes down to like, what did you actually do? And so that was really the start of the problem, which I've been trying to solve for a long time through multiple companies. And it was really, how do we work out what people do in the world and who they did it with? And that was really like the crux of the hypothesis. Like most designers, we formed one and said, okay, we believe the world can be more productive if we can know what people can do and who they did it with. And then maybe eventually over time, we could derive, are they any good at this thing? So yeah, it was purely personal pain point of just born out of that. And now I'm excited because it is really a way to tell like a very unique, the way we happen to be solving it is more the other side of designing, which I think is storytelling. If you're not problem solving, you're storytelling, which is the vehicle, I guess it's the same mission to get that information out in the world, but the rocket we're building is very different. It's one of, yeah, how do we help people tell their story and their unique path as a way to solve that problem?
Yeah, and just to add on to that too, I think when it comes to job titles, whether you're a product designer at a big company or you're a product designer at a startup, your actual day-to-day is going to be very different. And that's one of the things that Polywork really helps unpack as well, is like, your roles and your projects and the amount of those is going to be different in those two roles, yet you have the same job title. And so it's really interesting to uncover that and see that actually on Polywork today as you go through different highlights and activities on folks' pages.
Yeah. And what you said reminded me of, y'all did a Twitter Spaces today with Cassidy and Tomash and Phil, that they're in here. And that was something that came up, right? On LinkedIn, people see that like one time years ago, I did this thing with, I don't know, Java or whatever random thing that you don't touch anymore. And it's like, you get recruiters calling you in for that. And you're like, yeah, that's not what I do. Like maybe I did it. And it becomes buzzwords and those kind of a thing, right? So definitely I see it as more of the storytelling, and it's really exciting to see what people can do with it as we move on. And I think building on that, it's a different way of storytelling, but also you're calling it a new kind of professional social network, but at the same time, you're not going with your cliche quote unquote social media stuff like likes or public follower counts or things like that. And I'm curious, I love that. And I'm curious, what was the thought process behind that?
Yeah, I think we call it no systems of stress, so NOSOS. We actually we're gonna start a bit of a nonprofit around it. It'll be nosos.org. It's not live yet, but I think the thinking behind it was that we kind of take for, I think, just like buttons and popularity contests. It's almost so ubiquitous we forget about it, right? We're just like used to it in the world. They're just like these design systems that have been around for what, like 10 years now, and we don't recognize social networks without them. And I think what ultimately it came back down to was that the internet used to be, well, in its earlier days, I'm like aging myself a bit, but it used to be a place to kind of like express who you are, and it was a little more innocent I think in the earlier days. And when the like buttons arrived, when the follower counts arrived, and I guess when lack of a focus on actually building community, like safe communities, like at scale, like there are a lot of really cool safe communities that exist online, whether it's like Product Hunt or Dribble for designers and Behance, but they have a couple of 100,000 users or maybe a couple of million. They don't have billions of users. And when you get up to like the billions of users level, I think it just becomes really like the thought process that any person, let's specifically talk about designers because that's the audience today, but you kind of go through this process of, well, I want to express myself. And the way you do that predominantly online, because we live online, so we mainly do that online. And then we kind of go through this thought process where we're excited to express ourselves, and then we realize we're going to be judged for it. And then we alter ourselves. We alter what actually happened. And if you think back to our original mission, which is to organize really what the world has done before to make it more productive, I don't want to know the polished Instagram fake version of like what you actually did. Like we want to know like what you really did. Like what did you really think? Like people probably struggled their asses off on these projects, and like it was really difficult. And we kind of get this like polished glean in the world, which I go as far as saying like most of the information online is either for sound bites, for retweets or likes. It's kind of fake information. And like, I don't mean fake information in the sense people are lying, but it's a version of the truth that we tell the internet because of like buttons and retweet buttons and so on and so forth. And so we made the decision to not do that. We still have to work out other challenges now, like how do we give users the dopamine hit that they usually get on platforms like this? But usually when drugs and anything mix, it doesn't make sense. So maybe it's a good thing we don't have the dopamine hit. But yeah, I think it was really just a user health thing. Like, well, it was part of the bigger mission. And then, like we want like accurate, authentic information to be posted on the web, on the site. And then it really also, through interviewing a lot of early users, it became a lot about like the health of those people too, and like how anxiety-ridden social networks are today and how toxic they've become. And even our own experience of, in the last month, we went from, I think, having like 400 followers on our Polywork Twitter account to 17,000. I don't know where it is today. It's something like north of 15,000. And, as much as you get incredible like community being built around it, you also get some really extreme opinions for the sake of sound bites and retweets and all this different stuff. And I go as far as saying, like, I'm not quite sure Twitter's a community. I think it's a interesting group of lots of people, but I don't know if there's much of a community vibe to it yet, because it still is really, I don't really know where their community controls are or where their guidance is. Like, I'm still navigating what I think of the platform, honestly. Like, I've received DMs from like threatening us to asking me out on my personal Twitter, to just a lot of like super weird shit. And I think it's just like an unusual environment. And so I just want to do things very differently, like actually establish what's important to us and community guidelines. And it's like being eye-opening to like experience Twitter like a community at scale, and like how stressful that can be. So it's kind of like every week we get like a new funny message, and like for 99 are brilliant, but there's always one that's just like, oh my God. And so it's kind of like every week it reinvigorates our need to focus on just making Polywork a healthier network. I'm rambling, but yeah, it just needs to be healthier. I'm sure Meg has a lot of thoughts too, but.
Yeah, no, I actually think this is a great segue though into how we're doing things differently. And we were talking earlier a little bit about a new feature that we launched called Space Station. And I actually think, Pete, it'd be great for you to speak to that, about other ways that we're creating opportunities for users other than like the standard likes and comments that you see on other social platforms.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in particular, you mean in terms of like the controls around the platform?
Yeah, and just giving people opportunities through that they wouldn't have had otherwise, and finding a really unique way to surface that.
Yeah, I think what this is also like another like subtle design system. I think, again, it's something that's probably considered relatively ubiquitous by the world, which is you can contact people on social networks, and that's super true. But there hasn't really been any remote attempt to organize it or put like any level of safety. Just like I'll give an example. Like, one of the super early insights that we got from our user research sessions was just how many, particularly like our female audience, how much they'd been hit on LinkedIn. Like, and then like, I kind of ended up down this rabbit hole of reading like a ton of different articles about how, it has become like this, like kind of like unlabeled, but sort of like a dating site. Like, a lot of people use it as like for that, which is like, maybe some people want that. I don't know. But I don't think most of the people we talked to didn't. They wanted it to quite, clearly remain like a professional network. And so when we went about designing the Space Station feature we launched yesterday, it was nothing more complicated than, what would you like to be contacted for? Here's the categories. And then people can only contact you for those specific things. And making sure we had enough kind of like things like, proxies in place that if someone, like, for example, people keep outreaching to me for brainstorming, because I'm open to that on the platform, but it's not brainstorming. It's like a bunch of random shit. And so I need to put a report button in now, because like that is people spam, like gaming the design system that we've created. And so what Space Station is aimed at is really like just a clean way to do that, like kind of so we can avoid this like sliding into DMs culture for whatever reason it might be. It has such a negative context around it, and great stuff has happened. I mean, honestly, I think I think he's on the call, Seth. Like, I'm confident we met over Twitter DM and we hired you as like our content marketing manager. So there's a success story, but most of the internet has like a darker side. So Space Station is really aimed to just put more checks and balances in place for like what people in the world want to be contacted for and what they don't.
Totally. I love Seth is here. One other thing I want to say about this too is, you think about, I know Cassidy's on the call as well, and so many of our early users that were so instrumental in helping build the platform. Hey, Cassidy. But you think about people like Cassidy who advise, different companies, like the classic polymath, and like, how do those opportunities actually come to fruition? And like, we were fortunate enough to meet Cassidy on Twitter as well. A lot of, other folks may not have had those opportunities. So how do we go about streamlining that? So, if you're interested in being an advisor, or you're interested in being a speaker at events, that you can go about being available for those opportunities. And we found a great way to be able to service that. I had a call a little while ago with actually a designer at Facebook. She's absolutely amazing, very young in her career, but very professional. And she's very interested in starting to get speaking opportunities, but didn't know how to go about that. And she was all over Polywork as a way to really build out her page, represent that as part of her brand. And I think Space Station is going to be the perfect way for people to really get highlighted for those types of opportunities.
I love that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, something that's I think stood out to me from the beginning is the importance that you put in community. Everything from you touched on, right? Having advisors. Like I remember before I knew what Polywork was, right? It was like people doing these, like I'm doing a focus group on something, right? It was Cassidy and Ali and different people, and I'm like, what is going on? So super early on, you were very tuned into, instead of like, because Peter, you could have been, oh, I have this idea, I have this personal pain point that I want to fix. Let me do my thing the way I see it. And you could have done it, fix it, and like, what works for you. And that's when we get issues in like Twitter and things like that, where like you don't think about those things. And I know that since early on, because you had talked to the community, there were like heavy, importance on moderation tools and things like that, or in the comments and everything you explained. So I would say it's very community driven, right? I'm just curious, like what led you that way? Because a lot of companies don't do that. They're like, I have this good idea, I'm going to save the world. And then they do it without like, this is what I'm doing, right? And y'all are taking a very different approach, which is, I think, a really cool thing.
Yeah, the ego of men, right? Pushing through their own idea, basically the opposite. Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. Like I'm a white dude, and so you can see that like I think I'm on video for everyone else. And so like I think it would be really, I just don't think it'd be appropriate for me to design a product for me, because it would be literally discounting the opinions and as much as like, as a designer, I think that's one of the biggest challenges as a designer, right? It's like to not design the product for you. It's like you really have to step into like personas. And when it came to Polywork and designing with the community, it was like, I think actually, Cassie, well, I don't know if she will still remember this, but I think the first time we ever organized a roundtable through her, like we actually postponed it because we wanted to make sure that there was like a diverse enough like group of people, like from every aspect. And it was like, I found throughout, I mean, I've been a designer now for like 11 years. And I think the biggest thing I have found is that if you design it for yourself, it's bias. If you design it in a bubble, it's bias. And so that's why you see, so that was like, I think making a decision very early on to not design it for me. and that's like, and it's funny, like you can see that very tangibly in the product. Like what we realized is after about like 1 month of those roundtables was identity is the most complex thing in the world. For like that statement's probably true. And then identity in 2020 changed forever. Like, so we ended up defining an identity product in a year that everyone's identity changed, because all of a sudden they were working from home, and a lot of really important causes in the world that put what we were doing in perspective, like Black Lives Matter, like finally got like a global stage that it deserved. And then we were, all the while we were trying to define this identity product when like, like gender fluidity, like just, things that I don't think they were, I think it's just like, it's a very sensitive time for identity, and it's always evolving. And so things might have been a little more straightforward when earlier professional networks were founded and set up. But what it made us realize day one was that the only way we could build it was like the community. And I genuinely don't mean that in like a buzzword, like oh, we brought them together. I mean, like, the advisors could speak better to this than me, but I'm pretty sure we did maybe like 30 focus groups all together, like run by advisors. We made sure that like there was a really, really strong diversity to those in terms of like gender and race. And I think you'll see that in the product, right? It's like the one thing that we deduced from that when it came to like, okay, we made a couple of conscious decisions around why the community needed to be involved, because identity was important to us, that it was, diverse from day one. And you'll see that in like, we deduced that the only way we could build a product was if the user could create it themselves. And so you can create that, like literally that came from the badges feature, came from those sessions, because it was just like, there's just no like, and also we got like kind of like energized by the fact that it's like, well, how dare the rest of these networks tell us that like our job title in our school are like the only ways we can identify. Like we realized that those things were just like so not important to people, And the like a big learning was that the things that people place importance on just varies wildly. Like it really wasn't a standardized way. Like to one person, being a rabbit hole explorer was a really big deal. To the other, they didn't care, you know? And so we had to create this like pretty uniform, but also flexible way to let people represent their identity. That created a whole bunch of other problems, but we'll get into those a little later. But yeah, the community is super important. We're gonna hopefully repay them all very, very soon in a big way. But yeah, it wouldn't be the same product if we designed it in a little bubble with just me.
I think
Yeah.
also it was obviously very important as we were building. It's also very important to us now that we're at scale and will continue to grow. And I think one of the challenges for us and with any startup is how do we continue to do that and maintain these intimate relationships that we've had with our early adopters? And we really want to do that. It's a key focus for us. So that will be one of our key brand values moving forward as well.
Yeah. No, and I think that's awesome. And a little bit of what you said on community and making sure that you represent everyone in a way. It brings me back to the super fun brand that you have, right? And like the AI assistants, which we all know Jupiter is the best. But you've got your IO Titan Pluto, and I remember you did Twitter contests so that the community could name them and all that kind of stuff. But I'm intrigued, by just what led to that design, that type of aesthetic there where everything is very colorful, everything from the logo, the brand, and then having these avatars, like, because they're everywhere, right, representing, and I'm gonna let you talk. But
No, I mean, I think, well, the first thing was we had this like, I still remember pitching the team on, because when you're like a small team, so it was 9 of us that got the first version of Polywork live in April this year. Now we're like 17 people, I think. But and so I remember pitching the team on, we got to put these 3D avatars and I'm going to name them after planets. And kind of like the team looking at me being like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like this, like it just makes, I don't know, maybe we could bleep that out. I don't know if this recording gets sent somewhere, but and I think that this is like a key balance that designers have to like always consider, is that they're, in consumer products in particular, there's a storytelling element that costs you more than minimum viable functionality. And a really important thing for us when we created this network was trying to help people like escape a little bit. And particularly remember, we built this product during 2020 at a pandemic, working at home. And so I think the more we came up with the Polyworld style, and it started with initially just like, if LinkedIn like wouldn't do it, we will. And so that became like a mantra on our digital walls, I guess, for like, should we put 3D assistants in? Sure. Should we name them after planets? Why not? And I think it was really just about, like, any consumer experience is about escapism, whether it's like an app or you're going to the cinema or a restaurant. It's like you're going to enjoy yourself. And so why not, when you arrive somewhere, get immersed in, like, one of my favorite tweets from another designer, I can't remember what she said exactly, but it was something like, I feel like I'm stepping into a fairground when I joined the Polywork app. And that was actually something we had said early days. We really wanted people to feel like they literally joined a world, like a new world. It's just storytelling, I think it's like, well, you can see the controller in the background. I'm a big video gamer, and it was also an element of like growing up playing The Sims. I loved those characters and loved the idea of like, there was lots of parallels of like leveling up yourself personally and professionally in your career, and how would you do that? And so I also like loved Tamagotchis as a kid. Like, I don't know if anyone ever had those, but I still have them in storage. They don't work anymore, but like, you got paired with one, and I just loved the idea of like pairing people with this character that could over time help them discover like their career path and help them like through like, and we can get into lots of ways to do that, but it was a big storytelling mechanic. And actually, it's funny, Jupiter is the only character with human skin color, and it ended up being an experiment we ran, which was just that it was really important that the characters were all genderless, that you couldn't deduce their gender, and that they weren't human, like they didn't come from like a certain like creed or race. But we let Jupiter as an experiment, which was proven emphatically in the first week, which was, I don't know if that's the reason Jupiter is the most popular character. Like, she is significantly, I said she, I mean, Jupiter, Jupiter is the most popular, but I always wonder why. Is it because people assume she's female, or is it because people assume, or she's the only character with human skin color? So there's just lots of like storytelling and experiments you can do when you introduce characters into a brand. And so I'm waffling. I don't know how long these answers are meant to be, by the way. But
No, you're good. Interesting, because I think when I chose them, I went by their descriptions of their personality. When you said it, I was like, why did I choose? I don't remember like looking at the other ones because they were all fun and colorful and like that, so it's fine. And then I just went by like the personality traits that I think made more sense to me. So I'm curious how much that plays in. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to see. We've talked about all of the things that I was kind of thinking about, but you talked a little bit about the badges, so I kind of don't want to bring us back too much, but I think you said you came in with some troubles, right? Like it was letting people own their personality and who they are. And people have been creating the badges, which I'm sure you have way too many. Like it was really cool to see that there's college dropout as well, right? And it's like your true self. It's not like, oh, I am, like that persona that we create that you mentioned before. But I'm sure that comes with its problems of like having all of these badges everywhere. And you mentioned like, what are some of those, pain points and just issues that came from those design decisions that you made that open up worms?
Yeah, I think we solved one problem. It's like designers are perpetually in this like motion of just like you solve one problem to create another. And so we solved the problem. I think it could not have resonated more that people loved the ability to like create their own badge and pick a color, and it's important that they could, that they could do that. And like even like I still remember the discussion with early testers around being able to pick those icons, but not only that, pick the color, because like certain colors mean certain things, and lighting, and like for gender, or or bisexuality, or like whatever it meant, like there's certain colors not associated with certain things. And so we made those decisions, but then what happened was that 180,000 badges were added to profiles in the first 30 days. And those badges created, I would say, like there's a lot of issues we now face as a company from like a trust and safety perspective, which we are hiring for. But I think probably like the two more notable ones were that one, lack of gender diversity in badges. And so a lot of the complaints would be around like the girl dad badge. I mean, there's a girl mom badge, sure, but is the girl dad badge in community, not inclusive? And so we definitely get a lot of users writing in about that. And then the second one is, and this is some of the issues that actually Reddit has faced like a ton on their platform. And I think again, like it's why I think we're not gonna, I always say that we'll never have all the right answers, but we will try to design, at least use our common sense and be very intentional about the decisions we make. Is that, I won't name them, but like certain groups came onto the platform that created badges associated with those groups that we had to make some like 11 like game time calls as to whether or not we removed those badges and those people and associated with group. And we consulted with the trust and safety advisor, and so those just a very different set of problems, which we did not have 3 months ago. It was, will people create badges? Will people even log into Polywork? And now it's, oh wow, this group that's associated with violence and discrimination is not on our platform. And then you end up in like a very heated, not we had a heated debate, but in the world, there is a very heated debate as to the balance of how you design a tech platform that affords the flexibility of freedom of speech with, when people say things that are subjective, it's like, where is the line drawn as to what is harmful or what is not? And so we did not expect 45 days into our launch to be having to make some of those calls with like, but I think that happens with any level of user generated content. And so far the strategy is based on what my parents would probably tell me back in Ireland, which is like, use your common sense then. Like if a group that's associated with some bad shit comes on your platform, like get them out. And obviously you can't write that into terms of service, but I actually don't think it's the worst idea to just like apply common sense when you see groups that, but also like understanding them too. So wondering like, why are they here? Like, are they here because they think they find another home because they were kicked off another platform? And that's something actually that we just implemented in our terms of service this week. It's not live yet, but is that, for the 99% of people that were incredible welcome on Twitter, like 1% of them abuse our social media managers every day. And so we're going to implement cross-platform community guidelines. So if someone is reported on Twitter as being, abusive towards our team, they'll be banned from Polywork as well. Like the abuse doesn't have to take place at Polywork. That's just ridiculous. Like if someone's swearing or threatening because they don't verify someone, or they're still on a wait list after 4 months, we'll kind of like take hopefully a common sense approach to like the first couple 100,000 people on Polywork will be so important to defining like the culture and the community guidelines and stuff. And so, yeah, I'll stop waffling.
Very good. I know we're coming up on time a little bit. I was curious about the logo, if you want to talk about that a little bit. And then before we lead off into questions, because we have a few, just if there are any, success stories that you think are really cool that have like, this is what we were trying to go for, or you can already give a sneak peek on Space Station, but I don't know what's next for Polywork.
Yeah, the logo's easy. It's a Rubik's Cube. I have 1 million of them around my desk. And so, yeah, I have a lot of them. I play with them. They're for my nervous energy. So the whole idea was that we wanted it to be a P because a lot of platforms use the letter from their company, from their company name. And also it just signals it really when we landed on it. I'll definitely, I designed the icon like prior to that one. It was really it's like the one thing that designers let me do. It's really to show that your identity is multidimensional and it's not a linear path, that it's like literally the old world, the current world that we're emerging out of, is told to work 9 to 5 and go in this very linear career path. And what I hope Polywork can help people realize is that there's no rules anymore, and that you can come out of college or school or not go to school or college and just kind of do whatever you want. And I think just the only reason people can't do that today is because the lack of platforms available to them. Like my dad was a social worker for like 45 years, and it's incredible. And maybe he would have done that even if he had the options to do other things, but most people don't get the options to do other things. And so that was the meaning kind of behind. I love putting meaning behind AIGA. Like that's what I did a lot back in my agency days at Saatchi and stuff, was I designed branding and iconography. And then really quickly on the roadmap, personalization of the feed, so making the content super relevant, more iOS work. And then probably the most exciting thing I think for everyone and designers is just much more control over how you can style your page and your profile. So we're adding a feature called collections really soon, so you can group highlights together in like a Pinterest grid view, which is kind of cool. We got a dark mode coming, we got filters, we got collapsible timeline, which Cassidy really wants. So yeah, just much more control over the single player mode experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I forgot, you mentioned I got an email that so you've got the app now for testing, for beta testing. So I'm excited for that. I haven't had a chance to play with it, but that'll be fun. Let me hop on into questions. I actually know customization was one of the questions in there. Let me just share this real quick. There we go. So here we could actually start with that, since you were there, right? We'll be able to customize our profile beyond the banner image. So that's what you mentioned, collections and I guess other colors. I don't know what else.
Yeah, I mean, so in a year's time, you'll be able to make your Polywork page look whatever way you want. And that's what we're going to work back from that. And so it started with the timeline. We'll add collections, we'll add dark mode. We're going to add a default alternative Pinterest grid view. We're going to add a full background image. The reality, the benefit of our product is, I mean, there's lots of sites you can do that with. We just kind of want to make it easier for people to just turn up and look whatever way they want online, so they can focus on doing their actual work or their actual life. And so we will add just more and more of that every single month, which is really exciting. The dark mode and the collections should be launched probably in the next 3 weeks, and they're the two features that will make the platform feel completely different to what it does today. There's no longer just like this like light mode timeline. You can now have like a dark mode, all these little Pinterest grid type style over the platform, which is really cool.
Fun stuff. Okay, so someone's asking, what advice would you give to a new user? What can make their profile build out more successful?
Just the activities, really. I think like posts that don't have them, don't have those structured, colorful activities, literally aren't indexed in search engine. And so the way to think about it is, if you want to be hired as an iOS designer, you should use the tags. I designed an iOS app. I conducted user research. And so the more tags, highlights with a full descript, posts with a full description are ranked higher in the algorithm as well. And so basically just the more information on your on those actual posts, the better.
Mhm. And then this one is good, I guess, based on LinkedIn. I know people have had questions about this. What do you think the use case is for a hiring manager, and how will they glean what they're looking for on an applicant's profile? What's that recruiting side of things?
Yeah, it's been the kind of like the byproduct of the activity timeline it's been pretty incredible. We've had a lot of hiring managers. One of my friends works at, or one of our advisors works at GitHub, and he mentioned that he'd had like 2 designers in the last week use a Polywork profile to apply, which he thought was like, I was like very excited about that. And he talked about how it's a game changer for him. And because the alternative is your LinkedIn profile, which doesn't go into much granular detail on what you did, like we talked about, or you have this like CV, this like PDF text CV that is unstructured and kind of hard to like actually glean like what can this person actually do. And with the Polywork profile, like I'll give you an example, we have a 4-person design team. We're hiring another designer. I spent the first hour of a call with every designer, literally asking them, what do you do? What do you do? Like, you've been a designer before, but what parts of the design stack? Is it user research? Is it user experience? Is it UI? Is it interaction design? And I think the biggest benefit of a Polywork profile is you can literally show a hiring manager in a couple of seconds a snapshot of, I've done these things before. It's like, okay, great. You're a full stack designer. Awesome. And then hiring managers can actually see it in advance. And I think it's a cheat code. Honestly, I think it's a superpower when applying, because you can actually show them in advance in like a kind of like more formulaic way what you've actually done before. So yeah, I'm really excited to see that use case built out more.
Yeah, that's awesome. Will you be doing anything? Oh, that's true. Anything for internet? I can't say that word. Internationalization and multilingual profiles. Language.
There's a long word.
It is.
Yeah, I think so. I know that we're working on a lot of like that and accessibility type stuff. Off the top of my head, I would need to ask our head of product, Matt, but I know that we are used in 140 countries. I didn't even know there were 140 countries, so that's awesome. So we'll definitely be investing more and more in that over time.
So I guess we're talking about other languages and support for right to left languages and globalizing all of that.
Yeah. With the scale of the platform, hopefully we will. Yeah, it's a nice problem to have, having to add a lot of that, do a lot of that extra work, because we are being used in a lot of different countries by a lot of different languages. But yeah, totally.
That's awesome. Do you think there's any value for people, and how do you see that value for people who aren't content creators or who don't put out regular content? I'm assuming if you're not someone that produces content regularly, like, oh, I wrote a blog post or a talk, or like, Cassidy that does all the things, is there any value for someone that maybe doesn't put stuff out as often, is what I'm seeing currently?
Yeah, I think it really, one of the reasons we let people build their Polywork page on their own custom domain and put no like buttons in it was because it means the space is, your profile is as isolated as you need it to be, and there's no judgment on it. It's just a space for you to make it like a kind of log of what you've been up to. And so I think it makes, believe me, there's a lot of content creators on the platform, and DevRel and design advocacy and just like pure content creators. But I think it really comes down to what's important for you to record. And so there's a lot of different, like there's CFOs use the platform, there's architects, there's the head of, one example is like the head of typography at Adobe is on the platform. He's not like a regular content creator, but once every week or so, he posts that he's homeschooling his daughters, or that he launched Adobe Illustrator. And I think one of the cool things that, even if you're not a content creator, is that it's about posting the work in progress. Like you don't have to share something after it's done. You can post, I'm thinking about this stuff. And so that, I think, is starting to emerge as like a core use case too. People are realizing that once they kind of go in, they dump their history, they kind of feel good about their path so far being communicated. then each week they just say, well, I'm working on this problem. And I think in particular for students, that's going to be huge, because if they don't have a lot of like live professional workplace projects, there's a ton of side projects you can just be working on or thinking about, or even hearing your like a perspective from a up and coming designer on what they think LinkedIn could do better to be safer as a platform, or Reddit or Twitter, like sharing thoughts on the platform. That's kind of why, again, we built it as flexible, because like one use case is that a lot of people have been embedding tweets on their timeline, like tweets if they were popular, or they shared a decision framework, which is kind of cool, or like shared a thread of discussion they wanted to log. And so, yeah, I don't think you have to be a content creator. I think you just have to kind of work out, like not communicating what Polywork was by design. And that's something maybe worth mentioning there, is that, if we came out and said, oh, it's for content creators, it would alienate 99% of people. And so what we did was we decided to talk about the problem at a high level. And we knew one thing that was true about the world, which is that people are really opinionated and very opinionated on Twitter, and that they were probably going to have something to say about what Polywork was or is or isn't. And it worked brilliantly, because Twitter has been debating what Polywork is for the last 3 months, which has been awesome. And then over time, you start to see natural use cases emerge from the product. And I know that's like a very anti-marketing, anti-product, anti-persona thing to say, which is like, let's create this generic platform, talk about a high-level product, and then just throw it out in the world. But it's genuinely helped us see use cases for the platform that we never thought, that we would have just never even got to if we just said, Polywork is where you organize all your content. It's loved by content creators. I would never have joined the platform for content. I'm not a content creator, but I love Polywork as a way to log what's important to me. Anyway, sidebar, but.
Yeah, no, that's great. Okay, I'm gonna do these last three. We kind of talked about, the AIs and what they do in context, but I think you said you had more things planned, right? Because right now it's when you join. Hey, that's the thing, but
yeah, it's pretty lightweight right now.
Yeah.
So the AIs are going to do two things in the roadmap coming up. One is we kind of, for the designers that are listening, there's a really great book called The Best Interface is No Interface. And I love the design philosophy of like the best apps are the ones you don't really use. And so the first thing the assistants are going to do is, if you connect the other tools that you use, whether it's GitHub or Figma or Twitter, your assistant's job your assistant is like a colorful layer on top of like the NLP and the data science that we're building behind the scenes, should be able to suggest like, hey, Meg, we think you did some cool shit this week. Would you like to like one click added to your timeline? And so that's the main job of the assistant, is like an automated partner to just document your life for you. And then the second thing is that they will bring you opportunities. So if you say you're open to guest lecturing, the assistant might text you and say, we think you'd be great for speaking, at this design event, or that sort of thing. So those will be the core two use cases. And if anything, we'll fall back into turning them into glorified Tamagotchis.
Love it. We're asking, can you switch AIs? I guess we're having doubts.
We get asked that a lot.
People are
indecisive. We'll probably enable it. Yeah, we haven't got it right now, but we'll probably enable it, just because I think people don't really know what they're for, and then they pick IO, the weird one that I designed, and then they want to switch. So yeah, we'll probably do that.
Is it suggested to put the positions or type of positions you're looking for in your intro? I know that positions are definitely not very highlighted on Polywork, and I believe it's on purpose, right?
Yeah, we hide those. Well, we hide them behind like a little thing. I would definitely say that. So there's actually two things we're adding today. I think Matt might have already added them. One is the ability to say you're currently looking for full-time work. Like we like forgot about full-time work, and all the contact preferences saying you're open to these different things. We forgot to let people say I'm open for full-time jobs. So that would be the place to say it, because that's where we will index it for Space Station. So there'll be a section that says all the people that are currently looking for full-time work, and then there's a little cover note that you can leave, where you could specify the types of jobs that you're open to, whether it's visual design, UX design, that sort of thing.
No, end with this one. Well, see, you got some of the things I was cool. There you
I
go.
agree. I designed them. So I designed IO. Who knows what gender he is? Yeah, I agree. IO is the coolest. If anyone that plays Destiny and that's listening, he was modeled on my Destiny character, which is super sad, but it's fine.
And then I'll end with this one. What efforts are you working on for accessibility in terms of folks who use screen readers and other assistive devices? And I will add in just in general accessibility for not just screen readers and assistive, right? Just the different types of people typing, all that kind of stuff, color contrast, all those kind of things.
Yeah, for sure. We have a huge effort to do this. One of the things I think we could probably admit we did not prioritize enough in the beginning was accessibility, just like understanding like the wild amount of it that you have to like live up to at the moment. And it's super important. What we have now is rather than doing like one big bang accessibility audit, we just have like one feature every sprint is to improve accessibility. And I think that will probably exist for like until the end of time. And so we added like alt text on social links. One of the things we're working on in this sprint is tabbing between the different buttons in the highlight form and making things like that more available. So yeah, it'll be a huge accessibility effort, but it's more going to be like an ongoing roadmap than kind of like in one month we're just going to knock accessibility out of the park, you know.
Got it. It's
All right.
definitely
I have to jump in. I apologize.
Go.
I have to say that I'm really becoming a convert to the whole platform because full disclosure, I am 51 years old. I've been doing this profession for quite a while. And one of my enormous frustrations is always the fact that, you know, that my resume, I've actually said the words doesn't tell the whole story because it's impossible, right? I mean, you know, because what am I going to do? Chronicle a 25-year career, you know, and fit it on one page, and I'm really starting to see now how exactly what we're doing here. And I mean, you know, and I think that's really important to understand, you know, as you approach a new platform is, you know, like what problem are you solving for yourself by using it, by putting it in your toolbox, right? Yeah, I'm really beginning to see that here because because a lot of times I'm like, dude, if I could just get in the room, like I can tell them all the things and, you know, that you do. And I'm really seeing that that's what this is about. It's kind of, you know, taking those, you know, many streams and kind of weaving them into one tapestry about yourself. And I really am coming to really appreciate it.
Yay. This is why I put on a whole event to get Anthony to get a profile for himself. Good job.
Listen, convert one user at a time, one early adopter at a time. I'm telling you. No, I mean that's awesome. Yeah, it's I think it, like you nailed it. It's really just about working out. The platform is built in a pretty universal, flexible way. So it's just about working out how do you want to use it. And so, I mean, one person I love this just said that they were going to document what they do for their kids so that they could like see their dad's life, which I thought was like wonderful. And so I think it just depends, you know. I am personally starting to enjoy it as that too. Like I really look back through like all the crazy stuff I had done and just was like a lot of people had those moments on Twitter. They were like, I've actually done quite a lot of stuff. And like people were commenting, like, you know, this might help me combat imposter syndrome because I'm seeing it all laid out here. And that's pretty cool. I mean, I've like been crippled by that my entire life. But seeing it, I was like, you know what? Not bad. Like restaurant, the self-taught designer, like, all right, I'll take it. But yeah, I think just our branding and messaging when we do define who we are will probably end up being something like make Polywork your own. Like we're not going to prescribe how you should use it. People can just use it whatever way they want, and we'll tell the stories of how everyone's using it and all the kind of unique use cases and edge cases.
Thank you all so much for taking the time, you know, you, Megan and Peter, for being here and you know, chatting with us, and then everyone else that showed up. Thank you. We will also be sharing this recording eventually on our YouTube so that we can share it and hopefully convert more people like Anthony.
Yes.
And just a quick reminder for y'all that are here, if you're not on Polywork yet, Anthony, use the code AIGA-VIP to start creating your profile and share and go find people. And it's really awesome. I just thank you everyone. This has been great. Y'all have a
it's been a fantastic opportunity to have you all, and we are very, very grateful. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for having us. It's awesome. Yeah, and anytime. happy to reconnect. And yeah, I just sent my Polywork. I think a couple of people are as well.
Yes.
So yeah, come say hi. Hit that brainstorm button on the platform.
Yay. Awesome.
Cool.
Sweet.
Thanks so much, folks.
Yeah, thank you. Y'all have a great rest of the day. Bye.